Well, okay, so number one, the secret is there is no secret, okay? What there is 30 years of work and research and trial and error into constructing a coherent, comprehensive body of work that produces, as you said, these extraordinary results. The reason that it produces these extraordinary results is it's multidimensional. There's lots of programs that'll teach you how to think or meditate. There's all sorts of physical training programs, and there's a lot of leadership and management and, all that kind of stuff. But what we've done is integrated, and that's what makes it work. And I guess the fundamentals, I'll call them the fundamentals because they're not secrets because we tell the whole world, is first of all, our take on learning, right? So first of all, learning and change are synonyms. You can't learn if you don't change, and you can't change if you don't learn. People tend to think of learning as, oh, that was school, and I got done with that, and now I do life. And then, no, it doesn't work that way. So we've unfortunately been sold a bill of goods here about learning, where we think learning is the acquisition of information, ideas, understandings, and insights, and the way you get it is, looking at videos or listening to podcasts or reading a book or something. And no, you get ideas, right? But what we learned in working first with athletes and then with soldiers is that while the mind understands, and the mind can in fact understand in an instant, in the end it's the body that learns. Yeah. And the body only learns one way, and that's through practice. And practice takes time. So all of our programs unfold over time, and they're all about building new practices. Our product is what we call embodied competence. Embodied means you can take the new action without having to stop, think about it, look it up in some book. Competence is simply your capacity to consistently produce the desired result. No amount of understanding ever produces competence. You can read every book in the world on leadership, you're not going to be a better leader. Practice is what does it. It's easy to see in the realm of sports. Nobody ever got better at golf by reading a book about it. You go out in the range and out in the course and you work on your game, and over time you get better. It isn't any different with anything else that we want in our lives. So fundamental number one is our take on learning, 2 is our comprehensive approach, and 3 is the quality of people that we have in the organization to deliver the work.
Tell us about the process you had to go through to learn what you're doing now with other people.
Well, it was organic for me, frankly. Like most American kids, I played some kind of sports in high school, high school football player. Got to the UW. I had some issues with authority in those days, so it didn't last long.
I think you probably still do.
Yeah, well, there's that, but let's not go there. and didn't make it along on the Husky football team. And fortunately for me, a guy in my fraternity house played this game I'd never heard of called rugby. And he drugged me out to practice, and I fell in love with it. And 4 years later, I'm captain of the team as a senior. Went on to play first division for another, 8-9 years, right? And I didn't see it at the time, but I was learning all sorts of life lessons in addition to learning the game. And you learn the game by practice, right? We go to practice 2 nights a week. We play on the weekends. That's how you got better. Now, if I had kind of stopped or limited myself there, I'm sure my life would be different, but it still would have been rich just from that experience. And then one year, this is my transformation story now, right?
Okay.
One year, and back in the day, there used to be this big tournament every year down in Monterey, California. I'll give you a sidebar, and you can edit this out if you want. But one of the guys on my list of people I want to meet is the guy who convinced the Carmel and Monterey city councils that it was a good idea to invite 35 rugby teams from around the world to descend on the idyllic little Carmel community, and they turned the polo grounds on the 17-mile drive, the most premier real estate, in the country, into 4 or 5 rugby pitches for a weekend.
In my mind, I'm picturing a wonderful fan experience.
Yeah. Well, it was a wonderful fan experience, depending.
How was it playing?
Well, it was great, but it was the after the games that I questioned the wisdom of the decision. This would be akin to inviting Attila the Hun and a bunch of his buds over for the weekend to Carmel. What could go wrong here?
Sounds like a great party.
It was a great party. So anyway, we're on our way to this tournament. I get to the airport at SeaTac, and I had this, oh crap, I was reading a book and I left it, you know, how we used to read books, on the bedside table, right?
Yeah.
And I don't have anything to read on the plane, and I'm not a guy who can stare out the window for 2.5 hours. So I go in the bookstore at SeaTac, and I literally had this, you know, transformative spiritual experience, which seems like a very strange place to have one. But so I'm looking at books, and you know, you've been to the bookstore in the airport, and there's the thrillers and the bodice rippers and the biographies and the histories, and then way up in the top corner, this book was literally, and I mean it literally, talking to me.
Yeah.
It's not an audio book, you know, it's like, hey, come here, pay attention. You need to get this. And I'm looking around like, who's talking to me? What the hell? And I go over and I get this book by some guy I never heard of, George Leonard, and it's called The Ultimate Athlete. And what grabbed me was the title. I thought, oh, perfect. You know, I'm on my way to a peak athletic experience. Maybe I can pick up something here. You know, I was stuck in that old notion, I'll learn by reading, right?
Yeah.
And so I get on the plane, takes off, start reading, and I must have had some strange looks on my face, because this guy's talking about things I'd never heard of. Intentionality. What the heck is that? You know, this martial art called Aikido, and this energy called Ki, and synchronicity, and all this kind of stuff. And now, bear in mind, this is back in the 70s.
And how old are you here?
Oh, God, I don't know, 22, 23, 25, so my mid to late 20s.
So like a lot of guys just starting their careers in business.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, see now, my career trajectory is a whole different story, but let's just say it was off to a shaky start at that point in time, okay? So I'm reading this and I'm thinking, I don't understand what this guy's talking about, but at the back of my mind, I'm like, but I like it. I don't know what it is, but I like it. I was drawn to it. And the book was not of much use for my weekend, but I read it some more on the way back and kind of put it aside. And a year or so later, I had to have an unpleasant conversation with myself, because I'm now like 31, 32. I was like, okay, dude, much as I hate to say it, your body's not going to take this much longer. We're talking about some serious levels of abuse. Yeah. And, you know, you haven't been seriously hurt, but we're kind of pushing the envelope here. In the early days, we'd have a game on Saturday, and you'd kind of be over the bruises and contusions by practice on Tuesday. And then a little farther on, it got to be by practice on Thursday. And then a little farther on, once the season started, there was always something hurt or sore till the season was over. And like, yeah, we can't keep that up. And the other thing is, as I said earlier, as pertains to the career, it might be time to grow up and get serious about this career stuff.
Wow.
You know?
I'm 50 and I'm just starting. So you got it early.
It didn't necessarily turn out kind of the way I thought. But in any case, so I quit playing rugby, and I remembered this book. Oh yeah, there's this Aikido thing. I want to go check that out. I'm not done being physical, but I was fascinated by that. But I remembered, you know, this whole martial arts stuff, and this is back in the days as, you know, Bruce Lee was a Seattle native, and I'd had a very brief encounter with him, and I thought, well, let me go check this. So I went to the Kung Fu class and the karate class, and I was like, no, these guys are just learning how to beat people up. I played rugby for 12 years. I know how to do that. Yeah. They're much more stylized at it than I am, to be sure. Then I went to this Aikido class, and this was totally different. These guys were laughing and having a good time, and there wasn't any punching and kicking, and they were learning about this energy. So I took up the study of Aikido, and one of my fellow students was a sports psychologist. Okay, so now in time, where it's about 1980, 81, sports psychology was still seen as something akin to voodoo or black magic, at least in this country. But he and I got to be buddies, and we'd go out for coffee or beers, and I was fascinated because he had these really scientific sounding explanations for experiences that I'd had and just written off as too many bangs on the head or flashbacks to the 60s. Right? Yeah. But, I like your answer much better than mine. And we got to be buds, and we came up with this notion of starting a company. The very first name of the company was Sports Mind. Yeah. And what we set out to do was take the lessons that he'd been a world-class skier. You know, I'd run the K2 demonstration stuff on his way to the Olympics till he blew up a knee.
You're talking about snow skiing?
Yeah, snow skiing. And take the lessons we'd each learned in our respective sports, and then what we were learning in the combination of Aikido, which was Eastern philosophical, meditative, energetic techniques with Western psychology, combine it with contemporary physiology, and then in the spirit realm, it wasn't, of course, religion, but getting at what's the value system that you bring to what you're doing? Why are you actually doing this, right? Are you doing it for or from or, whatever?
I hear a lot of people these days say, you got to find your why. Is that kind of what you're referring to?
Yeah, a little bit, let's just go with yes for now.
Yeah.
And we set off to work with athletes, and our original mission was very simple: isolate, reproduce the elements that led to consistent winning performance, and do it across a broad spectrum of athletes. We were only interested in athletes because that was the arena in which not only was it permitted, it was expected. You were going to push the boundaries of performance, and that's what we were interested in.
Yeah.
All right, so we worked with a whole bunch of individual athletes, runners, golfers, bodybuilders, all sorts of archers, all sorts of players, and did extraordinary things. We did have one little problem, which is that this was in the days before Nike and Adidas existed the way they do now. And so all of our clients were amateurs and broke. So, whoops, doing great work, not getting paid.
Yeah.
Flaw in the business plan. So we turned our attention to teams, saw the same thing you participated in and coach into, which is we could take a group of individual players. Those individuals were terrific, put them on a team and the team would stink. And we'd say, that makes no sense rationally. Where's this vaunted synergy and all this stuff? But it happens all the time, and not just in sports. So there's something for us to learn. We developed a body of work we called team cohesion. We coined that phrase in 1984. And worked with some sports teams, national teams, U.S. national rugby team, the Seahawks, Olympic teams, the ski team, the archery team. And out of a long and entertaining, but in this moment not relevant story, ended up down at Fort Hood, Texas, talking to the Army about helping them redesign the way they train soldiers. So I'll pause there because this has been a long answer to what was a short question, like how did you get to be doing this? It just evolved, and it gets even better when we go to chapter 2, which we can pick up if you want, about Fort Hood.